The Physarum Game, a game mechanism and slime mold based system which should lead to problems in localities and to transform them in the best possible way. The Earth has only 2.5% fresh water of the total stock, so that only a fraction of the fresh water is drinkable. This water serves 7.77 billion people by now. It is expected that by 2030 a global demand for water will rise up to 50%. Cape Town has beautiful sights, with the Table Mountain and the National Park. Looking on the water situation in Cape Town, we can consider that a lot of fresh water is lost. If you extrapolate it and consider that there is too far, too little precipitation, in 2030 there will be a demand for water of over 17.7 billion cubic meters. To counteract this phenomenon, a first topic is introduced. Many people play computer games these days. Today's topics include interactive storytelling, interactivity, but we will focus on the game mechanics. The second topic deals with a slime mold, called Physarum polycephalum. It behaves and moves like a giant amoeba. By these experiments we can see how the slime mold actually behaves in the space. It is always looking for the best path by acting to the given parameters. In the next step, the simulations are digitalized. If you analyze the way you program design a game, you come to the conclusion that you could project this gaming pattern onto the slime mold. A primitive Physarum machine is generated and is now being carried out digitally. The simulations describe a system generated by individuals having similar or different interests. Based on these, the individuals will follow their path. An algorithm is used to support the connectivity. The red support lines guide the player in one direction to look for food. If the efficiency is not guaranteed, the connection dies and another direction is taken. A lot of mechanics have been applied. The result is, like gaming, guided by chance. The sources, attractors and repellents were always assigned different positions. Thus, the Physarum machine always grows differently. In order to turn the Physarum computer into a functioning system, it will interact with the morphology of Cape Town. The figure on the left shows how the process would combine various interests that would attract society. The right figure illustrates different thinking people living in the same city. The occurrences within the city are subdivided. This work as independent layer and attractor. The figures illustrate again how little water gets into the city. The Physarum machine moves over the entire morphology and networks all topics. The different layers and teams have variance in the strengths of the attraction. Starting with water, which has the most attraction, an entire network is created. To bring all the mechanisms together, CycleGAN is used. It allows the primary reinterpret the city. For comparison, the digital result that became the Physarum machine with the help of many mechanisms. Second, the CycleGAN domain, resulting from the physical model and the map of Cape Town. We can see that the techniques achieve a similar result. The focus here was on the city center. Once again, CycleGAN was applied. This results in a new interpreted morphology of the city center. Based on the resulting images, a 3D model is developed. The heights are used to determine where water should flow and where land has arisen. Underneath 234 meters, water pits are installed in the morphology. The entire population is settled along the rivers and water resources. In the final step, the technique is applied to the whole city, what generated a complete new morphology. But the principle could bring a lot more water into it. I applied the same principle as for the city center map. In addition, the Physarum experiments and diagrams helped to discover the right places for the water pits. The illustration shows how the morphology actually could look like. The 3D rendered figure is showing all the processed water pits. A new morphology has emerged which is based on the thesis. 3 components. Physarum polycephalum, mechanism of gaming, and CycleGAN created a computed machine that is able to learn and project onto a morphology. Water pits are always responsible as leaders. This networks the entire system and people needs are linked to it. New city centers and rural towns are winded around the hotspots. The game interface becomes visible. This is how the player becomes part of the event. After a short intro, the player can start right away if they don't want to read the instructions. In the first phase, the players can choose where they live and where their water resources are located. The distance between the two is then calculated. The interface begins the first interaction. The interface calculates the attractors and repellents between the two coordinates. In order to get a result, the player are asked a number of questions that are intended to be used for the connectivity of the player. Depending on the interests of the player, there are more or less networks between the players and the water resources. In between, the player can look at the overall results of the players. The total of the players is calculated to form an entire network. The player can resume the game at any time. If the player is completely connected to the network, the game is over. The stats can be displayed again. The experience points are calculated based on the water resources desired by the players. A simulation of Cape Town is shown illustrating how the network of players could transform the city. This last picture indicates how the whole Physarum machine worked and has trained. This whole process ultimately leads to the result of the new morphology of Cape Town.